I'm addicted and expensive. Byron Wilcott. And I'm watching WGS-TV.
Hello everyone, welcome to another installment of WGS-TV right here on Spreaker.com and YouTube.com/Wrestlegamer and ZFX-TV. I'm the Wrestlegamer Double People Boudreaux, and guys and gals are going to continue to talk about the Monday Night Wars as we are on episode 2 now. The rise of the nWo, quite possibly considered one of the most influential factions in the history of started talking about, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall as they were Diesel and Razor Ramon and in WWE, and they start trying to chronicle them going into WCW and how everything worked back then. And one of the things they did say is back then, during the mid-90s, especially around the Attitude Era time, there was really no internet, so there were no dirt sheets per se to talk about the backstage going on in the world of professional wrestling. So when Scott Hall jumped from WWE to WCW and showed up that night, it indeed struck a chord in the wrestling industry. Because even though the signing of Lex Luger was in itself a big deal, and the appearance of Lex Luger on the very first episode of Monday Nitro was indeed a huge deal, to have someone like Scott Hall going on there and say, you guys know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. And a lot of fans back in the day really considered that to be a shot from Vince McMahon. A lot of guys over to WCW to take over the territory, take over the company and whatnot. And even with the inclusion of Kevin Nash, and from what they said in the episode, that Eric Bischoff really offered Hall and Nash some pretty sweet numbers. I think they said like a million, 1.2 million for 150 days a year. Now, the offer that Eric Bischoff, and at the time, the guys were working like 300 days a year and stuff like that, and at that point in time wasn't really ready to commit to that type of a contract. They even said so in there, so that's why Nash had jumped. And again, it was just such a big chord, it was striking such a big nerve for what Eric Bischoff did, because if you guys remember, like before the formation of the nWo, when they were just going out there and doing stuff in the crowd, that Hall and Nash remained nameless for a set period of time. And to me, that was a brilliant move, because when fans looked at the two guys, when they looked at Hall and looked at Nash, they were seeing Razor Ramon and Diesel. That's what they were seeing. And there were, I even remember to this day, chants of Diesel resonating from WCW crowds. That's when you know something is working, in my opinion. That's when you know something is really starting to get hot. Now, it was right around the time Hogan. Now, when Bischoff initially pitched the idea to Hogan, Hogan flat out turned it down and showed Bischoff the door. Then Hogan, as we know, went off to do movies and Thunder in Paradise, if I'm not mistaken. And it was just that for the longest time. And then they even said in the episode, Hogan called Bischoff and asked, who the third man was. And Sting, in my mind, wouldn't have had much of an impact, in my opinion, as compared to Hulk Hogan and the impact that he made as Hollywood Hulk Hogan, which really transcended the wrestling genre in a sense, and Hulk Hogan's heel turn is widely considered to be incredibly iconic in the wrestling industry because of the fact that Hulk Hogan was one of the big baby faces of professional wrestling throughout the 80s and the 90s. But WCW and Eric Bischoff knew that they had to do something to change the formulaic program they were had. Because when people were looking, and I agree with what they said on the program, when people were looking back at what WWE and from the 80s were now there. Macho Man was there, Hogan was there, Flair was there, Anderson was there, and it was just filled with guys from the 80s. So when you compare the products, and even Eric Bischoff himself on the program made it, in my mind, a fair comparison to what the products were back in the day. I mean, Eric Bischoff's guys were like using their real names. It was kind of gritty, reality-based in a sense, where Vince McMahon's product before the Attitude Era was mainly colorful family entertainment style characters like Doink the Clown, Duke the Dumpster Drosy, the Godwins, if you guys remember those guys. And to me, it just wasn't a program that was really worth watching. And I really found myself back in the day watching more of Nitro, more and putting out back in the day wasn't interesting me. What was really more interesting was the whole nWo storyline. How it was cool to be the bad guys in a sense, and it really was a storyline was worth watching because I've said it for the longest time on the reviews, guys. When wrestling becomes predictable, it becomes boring. The air and the edginess of the nWo added a huge unpredictability factor because you never know what these guys were going to do. You never knew what they were going to do next, and that was an air of excitement in the wrestling industry at the time. And that's what really drew a lot of fans to WCW and what really helped WCW win the ratings war for some 2 years, and for good reasons though, and it's something I really never noticed at that time when I was watching WCW, but it kind of caught my eye when I was watching the Rise of the nWo episode, and that was the fact that I want to say about 90% of the original nWo were former WWE guys. I mean, take a look at this. I mean, it was Nash, Hall, huge names from WWE, Vincent, a.k.a. Virgil, who I met at WrestleCon, Ted DiBiase, again, names from WWE. And Kevin Sullivan kind of brought up a reference that one of the reasons fans were tuning in to what they were doing with the nWo is the fact that there were a lot of former WWE guys. Mike Rotunda was in there as well. And they were beating up WCW guys. And they were really considering that to be a WWE versus WCW war. Kind of ironic in a sense, because it kind of was, in terms of the ratings. In a sense, as somebody just messaged me on Facebook, as somebody's just going to have to wait. I do apologize for that little bit of an interruption. But anyway, guys and gals, to me, line didn't happen, then I think WCW probably would have caved a lot sooner than 2001. Because the brilliance of Eric Bischoff in the formation of this faction, this group, is really what helped push WCW to go on and win the ratings war from 1996 to 1998. and kind of joined the faction before he actually did. But he made it work. He made it work, you know. And when they debuted their NWO Sold Out program, especially with all the vignettes, I love those vignettes. Those vignettes were edgy. They were different, you know, and it fit the gimmick of the NWO. And I would like to know who the voice was. I would like to know who that guy was, because they never mentioned this guy, you know. And you want to think about, you know, influential names and faces when it pertains to the New World Order. That voice who did the announcements, like the preceding announcement has been paid for by the New World Order. To me, in my mind, that's an influential voice. And that voice on WCW has always pertained to the New World Order. And even him saying New World Order was actually kind of piped in during the entrance theme when they would come out. You know, so that's how really influential that voice in my mind is. Now, they would go on to talk about how WWE and it didn't work. You know, it didn't work. You know, because when Nash and Hall were there as both those characters, they made him work. Now, all due respect to Chris Kanyon and all due respect to Kane, I'm pretty sure a lot of fans are thinking, Kane was making. They just did not have the impact in those characters that Kevin Nash and Scott Hall had. You know, they didn't really resonate with the fans, in a sense, in my mind, and it was just a dismal failure. And I think it was just a cheap, pathetic attempt by WWE to fire back at Hall and Nash and WCW for the success they were having. Like, you guys can't use the Diesel and Razor Ramon names. We're going to use them, and we're going to give them to these guys, and they just dropped the ball. Now, they would end the episode with references to the edginess that Vince McMahon was starting to bring into his product, with Stone Cold Steve Austin and D-Generation X. And I do believe they do have episodes of the Monday Night Wars when they were talking more about that subject. So, but again, this is just one of the main reasons why WCW was put on the map in the Attitude Era, in my mind, and it's really hard to deny that the impact the NWO had on the wrestling industry per se. It's very hard to dispute that, because to the point where guys and girls, that's how iconic and influential the NWO name is. Now, when they would go on to WWE's NWO, it was just Vince McMahon flushing that name down the toilet. That's all it was. So, but again, it's one of the things I loved about coming on here, guys. You know, to not only talk about wrestling, but to share some of my experiences with you guys, and to kind of reminisce about the times of the Attitude Era, reminisce of the times of WCW and everything they would do with the NWO that made them so grand, that made them so good, that really propelled WCW to win the ratings war from 96 to 98. And it's just for life. What I want to know now from you guys out there, the viewers and subscribers, your thoughts about the rise of the NWO episode from the Monday Night Wars. I definitely want to know what you guys out there have to say, Be sure you put your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and favorite this video. If you're listening to me on Spreaker.com right now, be sure you hit that follow button. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/WGS-TV. And don't forget to please subscribe to youtube.com/Wrestlegamer and youtube.com/ZFXTV Network if you haven't already. So with that being said, I'm the Wrestlegamer, Double B Billy Boudreaux, saying keep on trucking.
Now we're getting close to the